Welcome to the Lorecast. I'm Dr. Craig Chalkwist, and we're here to discuss the stories by which we deeply live. At this historical moment, with old institutions and governments crumbling on every side and authoritarians marching up to take control, we definitely need more activists in the world, but there's another kind of change agent that we also need as well. During the Civil War in El Salvador, women set up committees called Committees for Joy. They understood that one of the ways they could support their effort towards sovereignty was by boosting not only morale, but giving people a sense of what they were there for. Here in the U.S., Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist, is famous for popping in, sometimes unannounced, with his cello and brightening a situation with music. What's less known is that he also does this to bring attention to things like poor and rundown inner city neighborhoods and other areas of civic life that desperately need attention, vulnerable people who need attention. He has done something called the Bach Project. And in an interview, he asked a very good question about all this. He said, Bach's music, with its extraordinary empathy and soaring imagination, is one way that I can invite people to sit together, listen and share an experience. So in each community, I played these suites as an offering, and I asked a simple question. How else is culture helping us to imagine and build a better world? Chloe Valdery does work healing racism through love, through insight, through different kinds of difficult conversations that go deep. Palestinian musicians are playing in the West Bank and Gaza as well when they can. There are groups of Persian doctors who were singing not only under lockdown during the COVID pandemic, but even before that during the Iran-Iraq war. Frisbees and frisbee games have been used to build bridges between enemies. Star Wars characters have inspired BIPOC women to go into fuller ways of being with no apologies. There's all kinds of good things happening around the world that are being created through inspiration, through different kinds of storytelling. You've heard me talk about some examples of those in the past when I mentioned enchantivism, and that's one form of this. Telling larger stories, showing bigger, wider possibilities for where we could go, not just emphasizing what's going wrong, which of course is needed, but it's not enough. So taking a cue from my own fiction, I've been talking online a lot and to my students about something I'm calling lamplighting. Lamplighters are a new kind of change agent that work through imagination and reimagination, through storytelling, through creativity, through play. And they do this in service to wider guiding stories, wider ways of being in this world, new possibilities. I think of them as possibility detectives. And part of this is inspired by, of course, enchantivism. Part of it was inspired by something that Abraham Maslow said as kind of a throwaway comment a few times in his works and also in his journals. He said, we need meta counselors who tend thwarted higher needs for spirit, heart, soul, creativity, fulfillment, beauty, meaning, balance, wholeness, things like that, joy, liveliness, justice, love, awe. Nobody's counseling us about how to get these needs met. We have good counselors, good psychotherapists, social workers, and you name it, coaches, for helping us deal with conflict, with pathology in the case of therapy, mental illness, and so forth. But what about thwarted souls? What about constrained spirits? Who's going to tend to them? And so this is where lamplighting comes in. And to Maslow's list of higher needs, I would add things like inspiration, a cause or possibilities to live for, re-enchantment, which I've talked about in other videos, some new opening, some new way to proceed in a world that is increasingly dark and troubled. So meta counseling through imagination, inspiration, restoring possibility, applied wisdom. Think of it sometimes as worldview therapy. So therapy not just for individuals, but for collectives, for culture. And it often strikes me that, especially in the case with deeply pathological worldviews like authoritarianism, like theocracy, sometimes the worldviews are even sicker than the people who are holding them. And this needs to be addressed urgently. Carl Jung talked about psychic epidemics. He said, I wonder what he'd think of the U.S. these days. He said, we're on guard against pandemics. We're on guard against things like that, physical ailments, but what about psychic epidemics that can also spread and do damage? For lamplighters, as I'm now teaching them, more about that in a moment, a central image, a central psychology is of hospitality. Because along so many different dimensions, psychological, social, cultural, spiritual, you name it, along so many dimensions, the saving element, the saving grace is in something that we've pushed out, something that we've marginalized from consciousness, from culture, that we need to welcome back. So the Greeks have this useful word xenia, which means hospitality, and it comes up in some of their stories. There's the old myth of Baucis and Philemon, the old couple who live in a village full of cold-hearted people, and they're the only ones who welcome in the strangers at night, and the strangers turn out to be gods. So xenia refers to that. It refers to welcoming in the stranger. The opposite is the same root, but a different word, xenophobia, which all authoritarians amplify to distract people from their own criminal behavior. The misbehavior of the so-called leaders. So part of what lamplighting seeks to do is replace xenophobia with xenia on all levels. Lamplighting also is about visionary work. And that's a huge gap right now in our cultural and political discourse. When was the last time you felt truly inspired by something a politician said? It's been a while, huh? Why is that? There's no vision. And as the old proverb said, when there is no vision, the people perish. Another translation of that same phrase, the same sentence, is when there is no vision, the people run wild. So visionary work is part of this too, part of lamplighting. What can we dream up together? What visions await fulfillment? And how can we actually get there? Everything great humanity's ever done started with somebody's vision. The resources came later. The visioning is a necessary initial step. So when you hear people say, but what's the practicality of this? You're attending some image from a dream, let's say, or something that happened during a medicine journey or during active imagination or some other altered state. Well, what's the practicality? So this is like asking a pregnant woman, what have you decided that your baby's going to be? Doctor, technologist, what's the verdict, right? Well, at this point, the baby's like 3 months old. How the hell do I know? There has to be space for visioning. I would actually argue psychologically that when people, scared people usually, are bottom lining everything, tell me why it's practical and all that, they're actually warding off the power of vision because they're afraid of it. As Ursula K. Le Guin once put it, we're afraid of dragons because we're afraid of freedom. So I'm calling online and elsewhere for revolutionaries of the heart, mentors of the soul, Koretz for the new, and Koretz is an old mythological term for the guardians of recently born gods. When something new and divine comes into the world, the Koretz show up to guard it so that it can grow up. I'm calling for people to come together to create inspiring visions, dreams, ideals. We're assembling those expanded guiding stories, and to put together new cycles of guiding lore, new stories, larger possibilities from the edge. I'm calling for change making, especially of our guiding lore, through wonder, inspiration, storytelling, creativity, celebration, liberating counter narratives, lighting up the possible beyond the actual. On March 19th, I went into TikTok and I put up a video called A Secret About the Edge People. Edge people who are outsiders, who are visionaries, dreamers, eccentrics, people you don't see at protests, that kind of thing. Also nuns, not cloistered women, but NONES, the spiritual but not religious people. Dancers, creatives, depth workers, psychologically, you name it. People about whom Hermann Hesse said, we have one dimension too many. And he also called us people of the mark. The outsiders. That's Colin Wilson's term. You get what I mean. And I pointed out that there's actually a lot more of us than we realize. And that the statistical category, the group of nuns in the U.S., is actually the largest religious group in the United States. It's mostly spiritual but not religious people with some atheists and agnostics included. So I put that video up, and keeping in mind that I'm recording this about 3 weeks before you hear it because I've got a bunch of busy stuff coming up in my schedule and I wanted to get this up. So by the time you're hearing this is 3 weeks old. So right now, the video I recorded is up to more than 15,000 views. And it passed 100 comments, I think a couple of days ago. So it's really resonating with a lot of people. The overwhelming majority of comments are count me in. I want to gather. At the end of the video, I called for us to all talk to each other. Let's find a place where we can hang out and make plans. Because imagine if we all got together and started doing things in the world. So it's getting a lot of attention. I've done some follow-up videos also, and people are showing up for those. Students are asking me, how can I contribute to this? How can I step in? All of this is lamplighting, as I said in the video and in subsequent videos. Incidentally, if you're not in TikTok, I posted it in YouTube as well. I think it was a day later, but I'm not sure. So I've been looking for free online venues. I do have a little community at Mighty Networks, but because they charge me, I can't just run it forever for free. I've got some pretty heavy financial commitments right now, some of which have to do with looking out for vulnerable people during this time when safety nets are being shredded right and left. So I'm thinking about setting a community up that's wider at Mighty Networks. That would be, I don't know, $20 a month or something. But there really ought to be a way to do this for free. And it's interesting to me and sad that the internet seems to be so locked up at this point that nobody's offering, that I can find easily anyway, free venues so that like-minded people can just show up and talk to each other. So I'm trying to work around that. One thing I did at my website, chalkwist.com, there's a link right on the front page to a blog about lamplighting. I collected a number of resources there, including a lamplighting handbook. This is all free, by the way. I wish I had had the word lamplighting years ago, because pretty much all of my work is about that. And so I've got tons of free videos in YouTube, some for inspiration, some for re-enchantment, others dealing with other aspects of what I'm now calling lamplighting. That's a free resource. I've started doing free Zoom sessions that I lightly advertise because I want to keep them to a reasonable size. I did one of those earlier in March. Just spend an hour talking about lamplighting and what could this look like and what would we want to do and things like that. So I spoke for about, 40 minutes and then Q&A. So 90 people signed up for it. About 30 showed up, which you would expect. And I recorded it on audio and sent it to everybody. So that's in the works. And on April 5th, which Star Trek nerds will recognize as an important date, I am launching my first 4-week class that's an advanced version of all this called Introduction to Lamplighting, where we really get into what makes for good storytelling, what does the science say about that, what does it say about imagination, where does myth and folklore come in, things like that. So that one's paid because at some point I need to make a living. So that's a paid class. I'm going to be running it periodically. So I'm keeping them small. We've got 10 people in that one, 11 including me. So that's a nice size for doing this kind of work. So for 4 weeks, we're going to meet on Zoom. I'm recording those for other people in the class who can't make it and no one else. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and people are lighting up with this. My dreams are lighting up. I think it's a good time to consider some expanded possibilities, which I mentioned in previous videos. This is the time, and in previous podcasts, to expand rather than contract. So that's what I'm doing. One of my fantasies involving all this was something I wrote down, not intended as a template, by the way, in my Lamplighter trilogy. It's in the third book, which is called Lamplighter. There's a worldwide celebration called the Colors of Liberty. It's later called the Colorful Riots, but there's no violence involved. It's people celebrating inclusion, diversity, justice, celebrating our higher nature, unity from difference, all kinds of things. They're all out there partying in the streets, all over the world, in cities everywhere, and in the countryside too. And it gets triggered because there's a celebration in Boston near where the Tea Party occurred. And I won't say too much in detail because I don't want to spoil it in case you ever read the book. But that's the flashpoint for a sustained worldwide protests, celebration ritual, series of rituals, music and dancing and everything else that is so strong and involves so many people that it sends the authoritarians running and inaugurates a new day for humanity and for freedom. So that's in my Lamplight trilogy. It all takes place about 60 years from now, but maybe we can make it happen sooner. And I'll finish by mentioning something else about this work. It's not only for heroes, and in fact, heroism isn't a very good model for it. It's for the rest of us. It's for the ordinary people. Whatever our gender, whatever our ability, whatever our color or culture, it's for us. It's for eccentrics, it's for introverts, it's for edgewalkers, as Victoria Lors would put it. And so there's a quotation that always comes to mind from Ursula K. Le Guin. She says it in one of her essays. The dead are dead. The great and mighty go their way unchecked. All the hope left in the world is with the people of no account. Well, that would be us, because we are the cavalry. Thanks.